Wildlife by Cynthia DeFelice. Chapter 5. Erik didn't unpack. That would be like admitting he was going to be staying for a while, and part of his mind simply refused to accept that. With nothing else to do, he poked around the room that had once belonged to his mother. Some photos and papers were stuck in the frame around the mirror over the dresser, and he examined them. One picture showed his mom when she was little, standing beside a brown and white calf with a blue ribbon around its neck. She was grinning proudly at the camera. There were several other blue and red ribbons from the Fortuna 4-H, a medal from a school track meet, and a program from a school play in which her part was listed as the Blue Fairy. There were a couple of shots of her and an older boy, one where they were smiling and sitting on top of hay bales piled in the bed of a pickup truck, another of them dressed for trick-or-treat. Erik looked closely at the series of school pictures that showed his mother growing from a cute, toothless kid into a cute teenager. In the early pictures, when she was elementary school and middle school age, she looked out at the camera with a wide, easy, confident, and, Erik thought, somewhat mischievous smile. But then, in what he figured were her high school pictures, something changed. The crinkly-eyed, mischievous smile was gone, placed by a flat, solemn expression. He'd seen kids put on that expression when they wanted to appear cool. Maybe that was what she'd been trying to do, but Erik thought it made her look sad. Oma called to him to say supper was almost ready. He felt uncomfortable entering the living room where Big Daryl was sitting on a worn-looking chair watching the news, though he was really glad to see the television. Where there's TV, there's hope, he told himself. From the kitchen, Oma said, "Goodness, it's 7:30. We don't usually eat anywhere near this late. Erik, I told your mama you'd call her when we got in. Better do it now so she won't worry. It's 2 hours later there." Erik had forgotten about the time difference. No wonder the day had seemed so long. As he picked up the phone, Big Daryl spoke. "That's long distance to New York." Well, duh, thought Erik. I'm the one who just traveled all the way across the country. He turned to look at Big Daryl to see if maybe he was kidding around. Big Daryl had removed the cap he'd been wearing on the drive from the airport, and Erik was momentarily startled by the whiteness of his grandfather's forehead compared to the rest of his tanned and ruddy complexion. His face didn't show a trace of humor. Oma appeared at the doorway between the kitchen and the living room. "Oh, he won't talk long, now will you, Erik?" she asked, sounding flustered. So that's what's bugging him, Erik realized. Big Daryl's worried that I'll run up his telephone bill. The cheapskate. "I can use my cell phone," he said, reaching into his pocket, but as soon as the connection was made, a message came up saying, "Call was lost." He tried several times without success. Oma, who had been watching, said, "I don't know much about those things, but most folks around here use a certain company. I forget the name. What is it, Big Daryl? Do you recall?" Big Daryl shook his head. "Well, the name doesn't matter, but it's likely a different—" She paused, her brow furrowed as she tried to come up with the right word. "Network?" Erik suggested. She brightened and smiled at him. "That's right. It's different here." It's different here, all right, Erik thought. "I could just email her," he said. "She's online a lot." "Oh, goodness," said Oma. "You need a computer for that, don't you?" Erik nodded, his heart sinking. "We don't have one of those. I don't really understand what on earth people are doing staring at those things all day." Erik couldn't believe it. He was trapped in a house without a cell phone or a computer. It was like a nightmare. Oma handed him an old-fashioned telephone with a coiled cord. "Here, go ahead and call your mama. I expect she'd rather hear your voice anyhow." When his mother asked, he told her that the plane trip had been torture. She asked a few more cheerful questions, but he was having no part of being cheered up. He wanted to tell her how awful everything was and how he couldn't believe she had sent him to this creepy house with her scary, mean old father who never talked. a place that had no school, where his cell phone didn't work, where there were no other kids, no computer, no nothing except junk, and, oh, right, don't forget, an outhouse. He couldn't say what he wanted to say, not with Oma fussing about the kitchen and the great stone face sitting in the living room listening. I've got to go, Mom. Oma's putting dinner on the table. All right, sweetie, said his mom. I'm glad you're there safe and sound. Are you sure you're okay? You sound a little funny. Oh, everything's just great, he said. His mother must have heard the sarcasm in his voice and sighed. We'll call you every chance we get, but it's going to be tricky with the time difference. They tell us we'll be able to email you. That would work, Erik whispered into the phone, if there was a computer here, which there isn't. Yes, I know, but there must be computers at the public library in Crosby, his mother said, and I'm sure they'll have them at school. Erik didn't answer. We can write letters too, his mom said. It'll be like Pioneer Days. You should like that. Again, Erik didn't answer. Into the silence, his mother said, You will write, won't you? I guess. Meanwhile, you try to make the best of things, okay? And help Oma. Mm-hmm, Erik said without enthusiasm. Try to have a positive outlook. Right. Bye, sweetie. I love you. I'm going to put your dad on. Erik waited, knowing that he'd undoubtedly hurt her feelings by not saying he loved her back, but he didn't feel like saying it right then. Erik? Hi, Dad. How's it going? Terrific. His father chose to take his words at face value. Well, that's great. I didn't think it would be as bad as you thought it would be. Actually, it's worse, Erik wanted to say. It's hard to believe we're going halfway around the world tomorrow. We'll stay in the best touch we can, okay, buddy? Okay. We'll see each other before we know it. Yeah. Hang in there, son. I love you. Yep. Okay. Bye, Dad. Erik hung up and sat at the table where Oma and Big Daryl were waiting to serve supper. The meal was almost as quiet as the ride from Minot. Only now they had a few things to say, like, pass the applesauce, please, and would you like some more peas, and no thanks. After dinner, Big Daryl went upstairs, and Oma explained that he kept farmer's hours, going to bed and getting up very early. When Erik turned on the TV and discovered that it only got 3 channels and the picture was fuzzy, he said he was tired too and went to his room. He lay in the bed that used to be his mother's and stared at the ceiling, wondering how he was going to survive 6 months, maybe longer, in this place. He tossed fitfully, mad at himself for not being able to fall asleep, when all he wanted was for the longest and worst day of his life to come to an end. Stay tuned next time for Chapter 6.